Health Secretary or misinformed Maverick? The pioneer in this new coin term, make America healthy again. It's a noble pursuit and one giant undertaking, but is he the man for the job? Was RFK Jr. the right choice for Health Secretary, or did Trump just throw a Molotov cocktail into the health establishment? Because today we're jumping into the fiery world of RFK Jr., the man making waves and plenty of enemies as he tackles the health crisis in America. By the end of this video, you'll know enough to make your own decision as to whether you think he was the right choice. He spent decades as an environmental lawyer and activist, and he's also become one of the most prominent yet polarizing voices in the vaccine debate. His supporters, they call him a fearless advocate for public health and the environment, while his critics, they call him something else entirely different: fanatic, conspiracy theorist, anti-vaxxer, and some I'm probably not allowed to say. And so with a track record like this, how did he end up in one of the most critical roles in public health? First, let's give credit where credit is due. He's not been appointed by mere association, compliance, political leaning, or convenience. RFK Jr. is not some random with a loud megaphone, nor is he simply applauded because of his political pedigree. Being the nephew of the late President JFK, RFK Jr. has a proven track record concerned with assaults against the environment and health. He has been the David against some of the biggest Goliaths in the world. Remember Monsanto, the agricultural giant with a penchant for suing farmers and monopolizing agriculture? Kennedy played a key role in exposing their shady practices, proving how they deliberately concealed the health risk associated with their glyphosate-containing Roundup, securing huge verdicts worth billions against them. Yep, the same Monsanto that dominated agriculture and poured millions into silencing critics. But his battles weren't just about courtroom victories. They were about exposing corruption and corporate greed and the chilling way that some companies and even government entities bury the truth to protect profits and their interests. That sound familiar? This man made it his mission, his endeavor to expose this corruption, particularly when that led to damaging the environment and people's health. And that's not something the establishment takes lightly, which leads us to the real drama. RFK has dropped some big claims about vaccines, Big Pharma, and the decline in America's health. Love him or hate him, you can't deny that he's asking questions that few people dare to. He's been unapologetic about calling out the health establishment. Let's not forget that Big Pharma is the biggest political contributor in Washington, pumping billions into campaigns and lining the pockets of many politicians. And yet Americans are sicker than ever. 6 out of 10 Americans have chronic disease, and life expectancy is falling, or at least stalling. How is that possible in the richest country in the world? His origin story is interesting because he lost both his uncle and his father in assassinations, both events shrouded in mystery. Maybe it was this that stirred this growing suspicion of great conspiracies at high levels and alerted him to the extent of corruption and how far some parties will go to retain power. Some may be baseless conspiracies, some may be true or have an element of truth, and untangling that can be difficult. But let's talk about that label for a moment, conspiracy theorist. It is one that has been slapped on RFK Jr. for many years. But let's just take a closer look at some of his claims. He said that COVID vaccines would not prevent transmission, and well, he was right about that. He warned us of the danger of fluoride decades ago, and it turns out that it's perhaps not as harmless as we once thought. And the COVID lab leak theory? The mainstream dismissed it as a fringe idea, a whack conspiracy. And yet now it is widely accepted that the natural origin story would require a 1 in a billion coincidence as its explanation, with intelligence agencies now reporting that the lab leak theory is the most likely. Heretics and crackpots are usually called so until they're proved right. So are we still calling this man a crackpot? Or are we beginning to see a pattern? But critics are quick to highlight his controversial positions and policies. His history of spreading what many scientists call as misinformation has left experts wondering, is this really the man we want guiding public health strategy? He has also made some statements that are provably false.
We are 4.2% of the world's population. We buy 70% of the pharmaceutical drugs on Earth. 15% of American youth are now on Adderall or some other ADHD medication. When I was a kid, I always say this, a typical pediatrician would see 1 case of diabetes in his lifetime. Today, it's 1 out of every 3 kids who walks through his office door. 20 years ago, there was no diabetes in China. Today, 50% of the population is diabetic.
Well, according to the European Federation of Pharmaceutical Industries and Associations, North America actually makes up 64.4% of the global market of new medications. Not far off and perhaps concerning, but not accurate. As of 2019, 10% of US children have a diagnosis of ADHD. Approximately 3.3 million, or 5 out of every 100 children, are prescribed medication for this. This is quite a bit lower than what was stated. Also, only about 35 per 10,000 children have a diagnosis of diabetes, or 0.35% of the total population, with the majority of these being type 1 diabetes. And approximately 12.4% of adults in mainland China have diabetes, perhaps about 1 in 10 overall, although it's thought that pre-diabetes may affect about 35%. So again, he's not on the mark, but this is still a worrying figure. It's a shame that the stats he uses undermines his claim, but does not entirely betray them, because the point still remains. There has been a staggering climb in chronic diseases and neurodevelopmental disorders and autoimmune and allergen conditions. There is an incredibly high pharmaceutical burden on the population. We are likely over-medicated. And there are risks in the environment, in the food and water supply that demand attention. But it's not helpful to hyperbolize these stats, because it can easily lead you the wrong way. Look, RFK isn't saying the world is out to get you, but he has been in the trenches, or rather, peered behind the curtain. He's seen how science can be weaponized, how politicians can be played, and how narratives can be spun to protect interested parties. And now, he's on a mission to tear it all down. Can I just say, if you're enjoying this content, then I would love to have you along for more. Please do like and subscribe, comment, share. It really does help, and I'd love to get this information out there to more people. Hit that notification, ring ding ding that bell. It will be the easiest thing you do today, but it may just serve you for years to come. Anyway, back to it. His message is clear. Corruption is killing us, and it's time to clean house. But cleaning doesn't make you a lot of friends. As Ed Snowden once said, if exposing a crime is treated as a crime, then well, you're probably run by criminals. And no one has he butted heads more with than Dr. Anthony Fauci, the former director of the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases. There is certainly no love lost between them, with RFK even going to the extent of cataloguing Fauci's misdeeds in his book, The Real Anthony Fauci, which certainly paints him in a slightly different picture compared to the often saintly one depicted by many mainstream outlets, such as Time magazine, anointing him as Guardian of the Year. This is a man that could not guard a door, and sadly has done nothing to tackle the rise of allergen disorders. Kennedy's called him out for years, alleging corruption, unethical practice, mismanagement, and implicating him in the development of bioweapons. Now, if the litany of crimes that Fauci is accused of by RFK Jr. were untrue, you'd expect a retort. You'd expect libel cases. Yet there has been nothing. Admittedly, as a lawyer, RFK Jr. is careful. He's fairly well researched, and I don't think rash or uncalculated. When he makes these statements, he's fully aware of the level of evidence that would be required to prove them in a court of law, or at least protect him from any legal backlash. He knows the law well, so I don't imagine he makes these claims half-heartedly. And there is a plot twist, because of course, Anthony Fauci was recently awarded a pardon, but a preemptive pardon, backdating to 2014. Now, why would you need that? But Kennedy's relentless pursuit of transparency has certainly ruffled a lot of feathers. Most recently in his exploration of the safety and efficacy of vaccines, demanding more safety trials and the publication of complete data. And Kennedy suggested his office was facing opposition from bureaucrats within the department who had stopped his office from gaining access to these closely guarded databases that might reveal certain shortfalls in certain medications and interventions. And this led to the resignation of Dr. Peter Marks, who served as the FDA's top vaccine official, who in his resignation letter stated, "It has become clear that truth and transparency are not desired by the Secretary, but rather he wishes subservient confirmation of his misinformation and lies." It's not clear exactly what he's referring to, what element he finds so disagreeable. Perhaps he just wants to avoid any association with RFK Jr. But when you're asking to see the books and the accountant jumps out the window, it's not a good sign. And the Wall Street Journal actually reported a statement from a HHS official, and I quote, "Peter Marks does not want to get behind restoring science to its golden standard and promoting radical transparency, then he has no place at the FDA under the strong leadership of Secretary Kennedy." Now, for many years, RFK Jr. has had to defend, including in a Senate hearing, accusations of being an anti-vaxxer. Personally, I'm not entirely sure what an anti-vaxxer is. It's a fairly vague term and used relatively liberally. I'm not sure when someone graduates into the anti-vaxxer category. Now, he continues to reject this label, including in his Senate testimony, in which he stated, and I quote, "That's a pejorative that's applied to me to keep me from asking difficult questions about powerful interests." And he goes on to remind people that himself and all his children have had their vaccines, that he believes in the theory, the philosophy, I suppose, behind vaccines. But like all medicines, they should be held to a high standard and be thoroughly tested for their safety and their efficacy. Now, that in itself doesn't seem like such an alien or controversial take. I would hope that most people agree with that, especially health practitioners. I would hope that we'd be in agreement that we should have double-blind, placebo-controlled safety trials of vaccines. They do, of course, go through these trials measuring their efficacy and their safety profile. But they have faced criticism for some of their, what people consider flawed study designs, where the observation period may not be long enough, or they discount and ignore certain side effects, and where the placebos are not true placebos. He points to the litigation of HHS, where after 2 years of being asked, were unable to produce a single placebo-controlled safety trial of a vaccine. And you have people like those on The View raising the alarm that many people would die as he's going to take away essential vaccines. They are engaging in the usual fear-mongering without any deep thought. He has made no such claims. The only way there would be removal of any vaccines is if there were independent testing proving or disproving their efficacy and their safety. And you have to ask, has there ever historically been such a reaction to a health secretary, even when they've had no experience in the health industry or in activism, or when they've been in receipt of millions of dollars from Big Pharma, or who are just plainly unhealthy themselves? No one got up in arms about them. And it's true that throughout history in the medical and the scientific field, there are many who have proposed ideas only to be called heretics and lunatics, but in time proved right. I think therefore alarm bells should be rang, not because of who he is necessarily, but because of the reaction that is evoked, which makes me more suspicious that he's onto something. Ignaz Semmelweis was a Hungarian physician who proposed the idea of hand hygiene, observing that those who handled cadavers and then patients, thinking that maybe this was leading to the transfer of disease. And this was before the germ theory. This was met with resistance and ridicule, which eventually led to him being admitted to an insane asylum. And of course, now today we know the importance of hand hygiene. Alice Catherine Evans predicted that pasteurization of milk would improve its safety and reduce infections. Once more, she was decried, and it wasn't until 13 years later that she was proved right. Joseph Goldberger wanted to prove that pellagra was due to a nutritional deficiency, and his research, which did involve eating the feces of other people, did eventually vindicate him, and now of course we fortify foods with niacin to avoid this. Just because an idea sits outside of conventional opinion often means that it is the target of ridicule and condemnation, but in the realm of science we should be more open-minded, particularly when we face large problems, particularly when no one else is proposing a suitable solution. I don't think we should decry and dissuade people from coming up with ideas and proposing solutions. For me though, where RFK Jr. perhaps does stand out is that he practices what he preaches. He is 71 years young at the time of recording, but appears to be in great shape. He exercises, he eats clean, he advocates for a healthy lifestyle that prioritizes wellness. Compare that to some of the other health leaders that we've seen. For example, in Belgium, or Canada, or even Britain, pushing health advice while looking like they haven't done a push-up since the Nixon administration. They don't exactly inspire healthy choices. So Kennedy's focus on wellness is a refreshing change and something that I do believe is needed, even if some of the details need sharpening. He's not just shouting into the void though, he is living the example. I believe that he recognizes that you as an individual should not abdicate responsibility of your health to the government. They should not be in charge of your health, only you can really do that. However, the government's role should just be to help facilitate that, just by ensuring that there are well-run hospitals, by ensuring clean drinking water, and nutritious food that is void of any hazardous chemicals, and that should you need medicine, it is there available to you and offered because its benefits far exceed its side effects. Here's the bottom line. America, much like the UK, is in rough health shape. Chronic disease is skyrocketing, obesity is rampant, cancer, heart disease, autoimmune disorders are all climbing, and healthcare costs are out of control, and many hospitals are overrun. Radical change is needed, and like it or not, RFK Jr. may just be the shakeup that's needed. So does RFK Jr. actually know what he's talking about when it comes to health policies? On one hand, his critiques of pharmaceutical companies and government agencies resonate with a lot of people who feel the system is broken, especially at a time when trust in institutions is at an all-time low. But on the other hand, some of his claims, well, let's just say, don't align with established science. He may hyperbolize, and many feel he undermines many of these institutions and public health policies that would do good. Is he controversial? Absolutely. Has he made enemies? Plenty. But at least he's not afraid to call out corruption and ask hard questions, which is a stepping stone to finding answers and actually creating real change. Love him or hate him, one thing's for certain, RFK Jr. is not going to go quietly. And maybe, just maybe, that's exactly what we need right now. Ultimately, this comes down to one question. Will RFK Jr. rise to the occasion and help improve lives of Americans? Or will his controversial opinions overshadow the role he's meant to play? It's a high-stakes gamble, and only time will tell if it pays off. But what do you think? Is RFK Jr. the right choice for health secretary? Is his perspective refreshing or just risky? Is he a wacko or is he bang on? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And as I said, please do like and subscribe. I would love to have you along for more. But until next time, take care.